On today's episode, Mike and Ryan try Mike's beer, a black IPA, the contradiction of beers. Cheers. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Brewthers-In-Law podcast, where beer is thicker than water. Join us on a journey discovering homebrewing, craft beer, and more. My name is Ryan, and with me as always is my brother, Mike. How's it going, Mike?
It is going well. Starting early.
Starting early. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. You know that.
It is. That's true.
So we're talking about your beer, a black IPA, and just not to give anything. I don't want to give anything away, but I will say
it's okay.
Yeah. You kind of base it off a show that we both like, The Witcher.
Yes.
I won't get into the ideas and everything else, but it's based off The Witcher. So for our first sip, I wanted to ask you, what other Netflix original show, Netflix, please sponsor this episode, would you want to do a beer style and maybe like a quick style beer? You don't have to go dive too deep into what you do.
So when you pitched this to me right before the episode started, you said first thing that came to your head. First thing that came to my head was Marco Polo. So
Okay.
that show I think only did 2 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even remember if Haley and I finished the second season, but it was I think one of the first Netflix shows I really got.
Yeah, that's an older one. Yeah.
Yeah, but so if I were to do that, I would try and pick. I think it would be neat to maybe try and do something period appropriate. I know that the Mongols drank fermented mare's milk. I don't really know.
I don't
that
know
I'm up
if
for
you
that.
want that.
I don't know that I'm up for doing that. That would be interesting to try. But yeah, I would try and do a little bit of research and do some kind of traditional from that era sort of drink.
Okay.
That's probably what I would do.
All right.
How about you?
I'm going to go more recent show. I'm going to go with, and I'm sad that it was quickly canceled. Hopefully it gets brought back, but Cowboy Bebop.
Was that canceled?
It unfortunately was
one season?
axed real quick. I was very sad and very surprised because usually they don't do it that quick. But anyways, I would want to do it's because it's all based off Westerns.
Yeah.
I almost want to do just a simple basic lager, kind of like how you did for the your steam beer. Kind of do something a new age fantasy version of that was what I'd want to do.
Yeah. That'd be fun.
Yeah, I think that would be, because I know they do obviously it's future space and everything, but they do a lot of cowboy western theme as well for this. So that would be what I would go with.
Right, yeah. So take kind of an old style and then futurize it in some
color.
way.
Ooh, just put some color in there to make it it looks
That'd be cool.
purple or blue or something. But
a
it's
Star
still
Wars
exactly
drink, yeah.
Yes.
So it's funny you used that. So I haven't seen the live action, but I've seen the original, the animated, and I've always wanted to make a West Coast style IPA called See You Space Cowboy.
Ooh, oh yeah, we talked about that.
That just used all hops with space names,
Yes.
Apollo and or maybe Comet, Challenger. Hops like Galaxy. Obviously, that's the easy one. But yeah, I don't know. As we'll get into, it's interesting starting with a theme and then trying to fit hops around it.
I know,
because
right?
you got to hope the flavors play well together. But yeah, that's funny. Yeah, just funny you say that because I actually have kind of sort of sketched out an idea for a bebop themed beer.
All right, so I didn't want to give too much away, but let's dive into this beer because it's interesting.
Not literally. I don't have that much of it.
I mean, you got enough for at least one glass.
A little bath.
But let's dive into it and see what you got here. This contradiction of beers.
Yeah. So I'll be honest. My impetus for brewing this beer was a sort of theme based idea.
Okay.
It was really and I'll cover that a little bit later when I talk about sort of my beer. But I just had this idea came from a characterization in The Witcher, really from the books and the show, and just the kind of theme that I wanted to do to really fit the theme of like the character, a black IPA was perfect.
Mm-hmm.
With that said, I've always been really curious about black IPA, and I've always been sort of interested in doing one just because it is such. First of all, I like them; they're good. Do you like black IPA? Generally,
I've only had one. Honestly,
really,
it's from Dragon Mead, so mark that off your bingo card there. Dragon Mead does the Dark Knight. I've had it a couple times. It's really good. Okay. It's interesting of a beer because like it's black as your soul can be, but like, but it still has like a nice hoppiness to it. It's interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's sort of so black IPA was the first widely distributed black IPA. This is becoming a bingo card item too, was Stone's Sublimely Self-Righteous.
Yep.
So that was brewed by Mitch Steele while he was at Stone. If you checked out our Stone episode, which is a good IPA primer, we talked about this beer. He says he took inspiration from brewer Sean Hill's black IPA, which he tried at a beer fest in 2006. With that said, the first documented American example of something that could be considered a black IPA actually dates all the way back to 1990, which was when a place called Noonan's Vermont Pub and Brewery brewed a hoppy offshoot of a Scotch ale, and they named that Tartan IPA.
Okay.
And so that is apparently like the first kind of documented example, but it wasn't distributed to my knowledge, and it didn't really. Sublimely Self-Righteous kind of started a fad, and for a while, I don't know if you remember that, but like, I remember, sort of shortly after turning 21, the black IPA fad was still pretty big, and you could usually find 2 or 3 of them in a given store.
Really, I must have missed this out because I do not recall.
You missed that trend. Yeah,
I did miss that trend. I don't remember seeing really a lot of them in stores, even to this point. Even this point in time, I don't see a lot.
So the trend kind of it sort of ended up being kind of a fad, like a brute IPA. That was kind of a fad that's already sort of starting, that faded pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. The popularity. I've always liked the style. I was sort of sad about it. I read an article doing research for this that has said that this style is like making a resurgence now.
Okay, good.
I don't really see it though. As we'll discuss,
might be a little regional.
I've like really struggled to find a commercial example to bring with me for this podcast. Like, they're not easy to find, at least in local stores around here. Maybe it's a regional thing.
Yeah, like I bet you probably more on the West Coast because they do like their IPAs on the West Coast.
And that's a great segue. So when it was first developed, because it was pioneered by a lot of like West Coast breweries, like a lot of IPA styles, an alternative name for this beer was Cascadian Dark Ale.
Ooh.
Which is kind of a cool name. I
like that better, actually.
Yeah. So in reference to the Cascades and and sort of the Northwest, on the West Coast. And that's where, if I'm not wrong, I don't think that's far from where like a lot of the hops, like the Yakima Valley and like where a lot of these like IPA hops are generally grown.
That's your Washington, that's your Oregon, that's your Northern California,
right. And so so that's a name that is also used. I think the reason that the BJCP uses black IPA is because there's also like a red IPA and a brown IPA substyle, and like it just makes more sense. Cascadian Dark Ale is less like you have to kind of know what it is to get it. Where like if someone knows what an IPA is and you say it's a black IPA, people can kind of guess.
I about to say, I feel like it's like a little mini warning on there because you put the IPA on it and everyone's like, ooh, IPA, watch out. But if it's a Cascadian Ale, it's like, oh, an ale, okay, I'll try.
Yeah, a dark ale, oh boy, yeah. Right, yeah. It's almost like the little thing on your coffee that says caution may be hot. Caution may be hoppy.
Yes.
But yeah, so I think one of the fascinating things about the style, like you said, it's sort of a contradiction in that, there are. It's an IPA, so first of all, it is literally a black pale ale, which is kind of just a funny name contradiction. Yes. But pale ales and IPAs are typically dominated by hops. The malt is supporting, but generally it's not a malt forward beer.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're brewing a dark beer, any kind of a black ale, a porter, a stout, whatever, it's malt forward. You're letting those like roast flavors sort of be the centerpiece of the beer.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think one of the interesting challenges that I was kind of curious about is balancing those two so that one doesn't overshadow the other, or they don't like clash in a weird way. So just looking real quick into kind of what the BJCP has to say about these. The overall impression: a beer with dryness, hop forward balance, and flavor characteristics of an American IPA, only darker. Pretty simple.
Very simple, yeah. No.
But without strongly roasted or burnt flavors. The flavor of darker malts is gentle and supportive, not a major flavor component.
Okay.
Drinkability is a key characteristic. So I've read some interviews with different people, you know, kind of famous brewers of famous black IPAs, and they seem to have different. I think there's some wiggle room here. I think some of them would prioritize a little bit more malt. Others of them want it to basically just taste as close to an IPA as possible and just look dark. So I think it kind of depends. But in terms of, you know, basically we're looking at a standard IPA hop flavor with a dry finish. And then the roast flavor can be, from the darker malts, can be like kind of low to moderate. And then similarly, like kind of medium caramel or toffee notes can be low to moderate. And those are optional.
What's the IBUs usually?
So I'll get to that.
I apologize for my dog.
So IBUs are 50 to 90. That I think is pretty similar to what you'd see in a standard American IPA.
Yeah, that's about.
And then the ABV, again, 5.5 to 9%. Pretty
standard.
Pretty standard. Yeah. And when you're looking at, you know, if you're on the low end of the original gravities that produce that ABV, it's like 1050 to 1085. And so the only reason I bring that up, I know we don't kind of normally get into gravities, but there's a useful metric you can use of bitterness, and it's called the I think it's the like bitterness ratio. So it's like your kind of your gravity to your IBU. So like if you have a 1050 beer with 50 IBUs, that's a bittering ratio of 1.
Really?
But if you had like 1050 with like 25 IBUs, that's a 0.5 bittering ratio. So, you know, basically the higher that number is, it's kind of a way to sort of scale IBU to the strength of the beer. Because, you know, if you make like a 9% beer, it's going to taste sweeter with the same amount of hops than like a weaker beer would, because there's more malt in it.
Yeah.
So I think for here, you look at this, like you're kind of probably want to float around a 1, you know, a bittering ratio of 1. You know, if you have, at least that's my theory. Like if you have a lower strength beer, maybe you're on the lower end of those IBUs. If you have a higher strength beer, you're on the higher end. Yeah. I think I read somewhere actually, somebody recommended to stay just under 1 because you're going to get a little bit of like bitter astringency from the roasted malts too. And you don't want it to be like too much. So. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, that's sort of.
Yeah, it sounds like you want more of a smoother combination of the two. What you're aiming for, like when you do like a lot of West Coast IPAs, especially, like you want that bitterness up high. Yeah. You want the IBUs up high. I'm intrigued to actually find out what maybe like a Stone IPA, like their regular Stone IPA, would be on that ratio. That's something new that we didn't really talk about in that episode.
It's an interesting question. Yeah, I don't know if they list their like original gravity, but
probably not.
That's a good question. I know that. I don't know. Yeah, maybe on the break we'll have to see if we can look that up. But I'm assuming that you're right, that like their ratio, like I would assume for a West Coast it would be on the higher side. Yeah. And I think what you say makes sense. It's like, yeah, here you might want something a little bit softer.
Yeah, and it's funny because we've talked about this, I think, in like a couple episodes, but the Stout and Port episode specifically, where darker beers are always perceived as like super strong, super flavor and everything else. Yeah. But they're not always. Yeah. And this seems like another one of those things where it's like, it looks like it's supposed to be like a super strong, intense.
It sounds really intense.
But it could possibly not be because of how balanced it is.
If everything's in balance. Yeah. And that... I'm glad you said that, because that was really one of the things I was going for in mind, was a sense of balance. And again, we'll get to that later. I don't mean to keep teasing.
No, you're good.
But
I'm about to say beer's right in front of me.
Real quick, I want to talk about kind of typical ingredients. So,
okay. Yeah.
So obviously, American or New World hops typically you'd use. So we're talking your either American hops like Cascade, Centennial, Citra, etc. Or like Australia, New Zealand, those sorts of, and any kind of like tropical, basically anything you'd use in a normal IPA could work here. Okay. So, but again, it's important that they don't clash with the roasted malts.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think of an example, but like I can certainly imagine hoppy beers I've had. For instance, like, I know you can get like kind of like, I don't know that like something like a Zaka, like a real pineapple-y thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd love that with roasted malt. Maybe you can make it work.
I mean, the one really, I think it makes sense sort of that you want to do like a more traditional citrusy, because you think like a chocolate orange or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Works together. But chocolate pineapple does work. I've had them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like a chocolate dipped pineapple from Edible Arrangements.
You're right. I have done that.
Those are so good. That is
pretty good. Okay.
Those are so good.
All right. Okay. So I take it back then.
All right. New challenge.
but I think too, though, it's like, okay, are you using roasted malts that are bringing chocolate flavor, or are they bringing more coffee flavor? Because a coffee pineapple,
that might be a little weird. Yeah.
So I think maybe it's that. Maybe it's like no hops are off the table, but you have to know what malt flavors you have in that beer and then pair it with good hop flavors.
Yeah.
So again, so these hop characteristics are, they're anything that you can use in an American IPA, you can use here. And then one of the key things is that for a black IPA, typically you will use some kind of a debittered roasted malt. So like Carafa, or like Black Prince, or like Midnight Wheat.
Yeah.
Anything like that. I'm sure you could use like roasted barley or chocolate malt or something, because it's a free country and do what you want. But
America.
But I think I can see why, something like that, or like black patent malt, might be a little too ashy, a little too harsh.
Black patent, it definitely
right. And it's like that's great for a stout, but maybe not what you want for this style. You want a kind of softer, roasty.
Yeah,
thing.
I can definitely agree with that.
And okay, yeah. So that's sort of a description. That's what the BJCP has to say about this. And again, they classify it as like a sub or like a specialty style.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I don't think they list commercial examples, but again, the Sublimely Self-Righteous is like a real famous one.
I'm sure a lot of small breweries, similar to the Dragon Mead, might have at least at one point in time had a black IPA, or might still have one.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Because a lot of them aren't really widely distributed, I would almost say, yeah, like go to your local craft brewery, the one that has a huge menu and likes to try things, and see if they have one. Because at least around here, that's where I've had the best luck. Like I said, I've really struggled to find any in stores. There was one, I remember it had pretty sure it had like a cannonball on it or something I just cannot remember the name of it because it's been years since I've had it. So, but yeah. I mean, drink local if you can for this one. So. So we're going to try an example, and
as close to example at least.
Yeah. So again, I failed utterly. I found Shorts Brewing brewed a double black IPA.
Oh.
That I was able to find around here, but to me, and we discussed this kind of before the show, but like double IPAs they do not taste anything like a normal IPA.
No.
So
you
intense.
have to be ready for that.
Yeah, and like there's so much maltier, and like just so much.
There's so much more.
There's just a lot going on.
Yeah.
So I ended up just we're gonna reuse one from our Three Floyds episode, and we're actually gonna use Alpha Klaus, which is they label it as a Christmas porter. However, I think in most ways it is a black IPA basically.
Yeah.
That's what I would if I was served this and nobody told me what it was. This beer is 7.5%, 67 IBU, so it's right in the range.
Right in there.
So let's take a sip first. So we sort of again we covered this beer already, but let's cover it in light of, what if this was a black IPA,
It's so good. I already had one, sorry, while you were talking. No, it's really good. Like you get that little bit of maltiness right at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then the hops come in. I wonder what hops they use in this. Do we know?
It says tons of strange American hops. That's all they say.
All right. So piney and citrusy, most likely.
I was going to say, what sort of hop flavors do you detect in this?
I definitely get like a pininess that comes off the end.
I get a lot of pine. Yeah.
Yes. So that's. I'm going to assume Centennial or Mosaic.
Now, I wonder if they leaned into that due to it being a Christmas porter.
I mean, that makes sense.
They were trying to kind of get that kind of Christmas tree sort of thing. Yeah, I'll be honest, I don't get a lot of fruit in this. I get largely pine.
Yeah.
And I think I will say there's probably more of like a chocolate flavor in this beer than you'd in a standard black IPA. But it is like, again, that doesn't sound like it should mix, but like I find roasty malts with a little bit of that kind of piney hop to actually be very pleasant.
Honestly, you'd be surprised because I do a porter now, the Kerouac Porter. And as we talked in that episode, like I did use actually some pine hops at the end.
Oh, really?
Just for like a quick little bit of flavoring. Like I think I used like Fugel at the beginning, and then use I think it was Centennial or Mosaic or something like that, like right at the end.
Maybe Cascade.
Or
Chinook too. I know.
Chinook is another one. Yeah, so like it is used in some porters and stouts, but like it's maybe not quite as much as
as here.
Yeah.
But so and so an interesting thing from their website. So this says, I guess I should start by saying that the BJCP, I didn't cover this earlier, but they specifically warn you against, if you overdo the malts, you don't want it to drink like a porter with a lot of hops in it. You know, a black IPA should be more drinkable than that. Whereas like a porter it's a little heavier, fuller mouthfeel. You want to sip it. Mm-hmm. I think that this beer, one of the reasons I think it's kind of can be classified as a black IPA sort of circuitously. So they use English chocolate malt, which is maybe not something you would typically want to use in a black IPA. Because again, this beer brings pretty big chocolate flavor. In fact, I feel like I'm getting it more this time than I did when we drank it for the Three Floyds episode.
I mean, was that the first one we had?
Different
or was it the last one we had?
It was the first one.
Oh, okay. So, yeah. I was wondering if our palate was a little tainted from the other ones.
But so they also use Mexican sugar, which, for anyone who doesn't brew, sugar, because it's like 100% fermentable, you'd think it makes the beer sweeter. It actually dries it out and lightens it. You know, the same way that like rice or corn is used in like light beer to really mellow that out. And like it actually reduces the fullness of the beer, reduces the flavor a little bit. And so I think they kind of got away, that combination, using a more fuller flavored roasted malt, but then using sugar to dry the beer out a little bit. Mm-hmm. I think this is drinkable enough where like I would consider it kind of in black IPA territory.
Yeah, no, agreed for 100%. And honestly, like it's just really interesting that they do put the sugar in there, because like I know it gives you a little more of the ABV value and everything else. This doesn't taste super dry. Like I can still drink this. Like
I'm assuming that though that it was like it would have been a real full portery thing, and they wanted to kind of balance out the roasted malts and all the hops to make it not like dry, but take it from like full to more like neutral or average kind of dryness.
I can give you that one.
I don't know. That would be my guess. I have no clue.
I believe you. Don't worry.
Anything else to say about this one?
No, this is a really good beer. I think you're right. Like I bet you if the guidelines really came in and had to put this in the right spot, I don't know if they would actually say it's a porter. It would probably maybe be like a hybrid almost of a porter and a black IPA, because that IBU level is ridiculous. Most stouts and porters are in your 30-40 range at max, and this one's in the 70 range. So it's just interesting to see that.
I think, and then again, obviously not every beer needs to. Many of your beers would just be like specialty beer.
Yes.
But so not everything has to fall into a category. Yeah. But if you gave me this and didn't tell me what it was, I would assume it was a black IPA.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, I think it's at least a good something to compare mine to.
No, agreed, 100%.
And I think the fact that it's used with kind of non-traditional ingredients is actually kind of interesting, because it just shows there's more than one way to get there.
Well, that's Three Floyds for you, so.
Yeah. All right, let's take a little break then, and then on the back end I can talk about the beer that I made and my brewing process. We can try some of that.
And maybe I'll give some ideas if I wanted to brew this. That's your tease right there. Stay tuned.
I like it.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers. Clink.
Clink.
Our glasses are too far away.
Welcome to our new podcast. Welcome to our new podcast.
This isn't working.
Agreed. I think we're going to have to do it
turn by turn.
Well, now that you mention it, we are a brand new RPG video game podcast.
Our very existence hinges on turn-based gaming.
So join us on the Turn by Turn podcast, where we'll be talking about
Pokemon, Fire Emblem, Golden Sun, Shining Force, Mother, and so many more.
It's your turn to come and join us.
Hey, this is TC.
And this is Jim from the Studio Demands It podcast,
Where every episode we take a demand from a hypothetical studio,
which could be you,
and challenge ourselves to conceptualize, pitch, and craft a film based on the stipulations
or the demands
we are given. We talk about movies all the time. Particularly, we complain about the choices made in the films we've seen.
We're nerds like that.
And, of course, like any good nerd does, we automatically assume that we could do better.
Even with the demands and restrictions that clearly must have been put on by a production.
So head on over to studiodemandsit.com and listen to our previous library of episodes. Our library of previous episodes. Our precious library, Jim. Our library of precious episodes.
You're a pirate, Smeagol.
Okay. So head on over to studiodemandsit.com to listen to our library of episodes.
And submit your demand for a future episode, too.
So go do that.
Okay, bye.
Okay, end of ad.
And welcome back. We've had a nice little taster of a close example at least. Let's try the real deal.
All right, cool. So as you alluded to earlier, the impetus for this beer, even though normally for this our kind of like Mike Brews a Beer series, it typically starts with me wanting to try and brew a specific style of beer. This one started with a theme, and like you said, it was, I was reading one of the Witcher books after Haley and I watched season 1 of the Netflix show. I ended up doing all the books, and there's the kind of female lead in The Witcher, as anyone who watched it will know, is Yennefer. So she's a witch or a sorceress. Famously always dresses in black and white. Mostly black.
Yeah.
And she wears this perfume that is it's like made with like crushed gooseberry and lilac. And this is like a recurring motif in the show, the smell of lilac and gooseberry. And there's a lot of really pretty prose in the book about it, and how nice it smells. And so the thought occurred to me, I just made a connection when I was reading about the flavor profile of Nelson Sauvin, which is the really famous New Zealand hop. It was one of my favorite hops in my favorite hops episode.
And I think you use it for another.
But it
beer,
has this really this one.
I thought you used it in another one.
Well, I use it in our New Zealand blonde.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah, that's the only one that it's been used in.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and it has this really distinctive flavor, and that flavor is really reminiscent of New Zealand Sauvignon Blancs, like ones especially from like Marlborough. And that Sauvignon Blanc flavor is described as gooseberry. And I've never eaten a gooseberry. I have no idea what gooseberry tastes like, but I love that New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. That's like Haley and my favorite white wine style. And so when I was reading that, Nelson Sauvin was described as like the flavor and aroma being like crushed gooseberry, and I was like, I could make like a
Son of a gun, I'm in.
I could make And then so then I started doing a search on like Beer Maverick, because you can like search by like flavor descriptors.
Oh, really?
And I found that there's a hop that I happen to have already called Magnet.
Okay.
It's similar to Magnum.
Okay, yeah.
But it's grown in Poland, and there are a lot of hops that are kind of floral, but this one specifically was described as evoking lilac.
Ooh.
So I was like, all right, I've got my lilac.
God's will this.
Got my gooseberry. Yeah. Let's do this. And then, at first my idea was just, I don't know, a hoppy beer that was going to have those flavors. And then it occurred to me to add in the color component if I really wanted to kind of make this like a Yennefer beer.
Yeah.
Then I wanted to go dark. And so that was how I got around to Black IPA. I wanted it to be dominated by these like hop flavors and these hop aromas, and I wanted it to be black. So black IPA.
There it is.
And so the other thing I was inspired by is that I've been really, really vibing Perrin's Perrin Black Ale.
Ooh, yes.
Perrin is a brewery out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. Their Black Ale is it's just a very drinkable, mellow, very dark beer. You know, it almost like I would compare it kind of to Guinness in that way, only it's carbonated, it's not nitro.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of a different look, but it's about 5.8%, so not super weak, but like it's not. It isn't
gonna knock you out.
It's one of those, the whole impetus for it is like dark, but like dark yet drinkable, dark but surprisingly drinkable. And so I wanted to kind of take my beer and do that. I wanted to be I couldn't bring myself quite to like exit the kind of parameters for a black IPA, but I wanted to be on the far low end in terms of both bitterness and ABV. Yeah. So the recipe ended up being, I named the beer Vengerberg Black Ale. Again, after Vienna for a Vengerberg. So starts with 7 pounds of base pale malt, 2.5 pounds of Vienna, just for a little bit of complexity in the base malt, a pound of flaked barley for like creaminess and head retention. Flaked barley is also famously used in Guinness. To add those same things, good head retention and just like a kind of creamy mouthfeel. And then a pound of, this is a pretty involved malt bill actually. A pound of Black Prince malt, which is it's a debittered Briess malt. It's like their aside from like their wheat malt line, it's their like their most debittered, like least flavorful black malt, basically, because I wanted to use a lot of it. I used a full pound to get me to, a kind of jet black sort of color. And then for a little bit more malt complexity, I used 4 ounces of pale chocolate malt, which adds kind of a little bit of chocolate, but actually a lot of like nutty sort of character. And then 12 ounces of caramel 60 for a little bit of sweetness, just to balance out all the like the really bitterness, the bitter stuff. So then I hopped with Magnet at 60 minutes. And then I should say, I used Magnet, which was kind of my lilac hop, and then Nelson Sauvin, which was my gooseberry hop. I added in a third hop because I was worried that the hop flavors were going to kind of clash. So I used a hop called Laurel. And Laurel is sort of, it's a newer hop variety. It's becoming pretty popular. And I think part of the reason is that it's considered like a great blending hop. Okay. Because it has a lot of, apparently the name came from like the word floral because it's kind of floral, but it's also kind of fruity. It's kind of piney. It's like a bridge to different hops. It's a lot of different things. And so I've heard it's a great support hop that will like bring out the flavors of your other hops. And to me, it seemed like it would also be a great hop to kind of marry. If it's a little fruity and it's a little floral, it might like kind of help bridge the gap between the two. Yeah. So I ended up doing 0.2 ounces of Magnet at 60 minutes, and then a half pound each of Laurel and Nelson Sauvin at 20. So it's like the quote unquote flavor edition. And then I did another pound of Magnet and Laurel at 5 minutes. So then I dry hopped with a half pound of each. So, I don't know exactly. I wanted the gooseberry to come through a little more in the flavor, which is why I added that earlier. And I wanted the floral on the nose a little more, which is why I used Magnet and Laurel in the kind of aroma addition. But then really I just kind of wanted the beer to smell like everything. So I ended up just dry hopping with a little bit of everything. Yeah. So it wasn't super thought out. I'm admittedly, I'm not a super experienced IPA brewer. So this was what made sense to me. And then I used Imperial Yeast Dieter, GO3 Dieter, which is their Kolsch strain. It's the same one I use in our New Zealand blonde ale recipe because Kolsch yeast has kind of a winey, a goma, people call it like a grape skin, like kind of ester flavor that it can produce. And I wanted that because I thought it would pair well. I think it pairs well with Nelson because they both kind of have that, again, that Sauvignon Blanc thing. That's the recipe. So in terms of the stats, it was 5.8%.
Nice.
50
Perfect.
IBU.
50 IBU? Nice. Very nice.
So again,
what's that percentage?
The original gravity was 1.057 with 1057 with an IBU of 50. So that works out to let me do the math.
Bust out the calculator.
Yeah. So that'll be.
I think it's right.
50 divided by 57. It's about a 0.87.
Okay.
0.88.
Yeah.
Bitterness ratio. I'd been aiming for a little closer to like 0.8 because I wanted it a little under 1 again, so it wasn't. Well, I didn't want to really accentuate the bitter, but it just kind of worked out that way. I was trying to. I rounded the numbers I gave in my description, but I was trying to use like whole ounces of hops, because I hate having like a stupid amount of 0.1 ounce left over.
That's usually what I do, and I bag them up and save them.
Yeah. So I just like using the whole ounce if I'm going to use it. So that was my thought process there. But so let's I guess did you have any questions about the recipe, or should we try this puppy?
I'm ready to try it. Yeah, I don't have I don't have any questions. I think it's a pretty straightforward recipe. I think you got your the what was it? The Black Prince is what you said?
Yeah, it's like it's Black PRINZ. Black
Prinz. Okay.
Black Prinz. I don't know what that name means, but
because when you first said it, I thought I was like, oh, like Black Patent, but no, it sounds like it's actually like less. Black Patent's got more of a bitterness.
It's more like
to it,
it's like a carafa malt, or like midnight wheat, where it's like dehusked so that it's supposed to be as like mild as possible while still getting you the color and a little bit of flavor. All right, so
smell.
I've poured now. You give me your initial impression here.
Smell is very, very good. It's not like in your face. It's just mild. Obviously, it is as black as a soul can be. Not quite as dark as my porter, but like
no.
I don't think anything's that dark.
The SRM on this beer is 36. And again, it's an estimate, but like that scale kind of caps out at 40. And really, after that, it's just you're adding black to black.
Yeah.
So this is darn near as dark as you can get.
Yeah.
But like you said, you can keep going. Like your porter has a darker head on it than like
most beers.
Than some beers are colored. Whereas like mine is more of a. It's almost like the color of like a Guinness.
Yeah.
head.
Yeah. Yours is like a regular dark beer. I mean, I can see some like hints of red if I catch the light just perfect. I can see some like little hints of red, but like similar to a Guinness as well.
Oh, you're right.
Like a Guinness does the same thing, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you can talk. I'm gonna take a drink now.
Okay. Yeah. So for me, I agree with you. It has a nice aroma. You said it was nice and mild. I wish it was a little stronger. I think because I really wanted, again, I basically themed the beer after a perfume. So,
well, yeah, but it's not like in your face. It's not like, because usually when you get an IPA, you take a whiff, like, you can smell the hop.
That's true. And I guess I don't want that. I don't want that. But on the other hand, I think that like the kind of piney thing that a lot of IPAs have is naturally a more aggressive smell.
Yeah.
Did you get anything specific on the nose? Like, did you get either of the...
I'm gonna say no, unfortunately.
No,
and I think that's.
See, I don't really. I get a little bit of floral, but it's kind of it's sort of a softer, not like a field of fresh flowers. It's more like geraniums or something. I don't know.
Well, it's like there is a floralness to it, but it's just slightly there.
Yeah,
I can smell a little bit of the malt. The malt isn't overtaking with the nose either. Flavor wise, though. Like you do get that maltiness at the beginning, but like you do kind of get like a very floral. I don't know what lilac or gooseberries taste like, so I can't say anything. But like you get kind of a floralness, almost fruitiness to it. Yeah, more floral than fruity, but you definitely get it at the back end.
Yeah. I think I definitely get a flowery flavor.
Mm-hmm. That's your lilacs. There you go.
Yeah. And I will say it depends on the day when I'm drinking this, because we've had it on tap for a month or so. Some days I get, and my brother said the same thing when he tasted it. It's like you get most of the flavors and you don't really taste the like fruity, like Nelson flavor, but then that is the thing that like just stays in your mouth after the other flavors have faded.
100% agreed, actually.
You get it then.
Yeah, 100% agree.
And that's sort of my experience with this, with it as well. And I don't hate that. I'll say if I were to alter the balance a little bit, I want generally just more fruit flavor. I tried to be real. Nelson is like famously a very pungent hop, and so I didn't want to overuse it. But I think I underused it a little bit. I think I'd like to use more next time.
How much did you use in a dry hop?
Half an ounce.
Of each or total?
Half an ounce of each.
Half ounce
so
of each?
So an ounce and a half total, which I think I'll probably up next time.
I was going to say, because when I do, I mean, granted, it's a very different style, but when I dry hop in the Hazy Triforce, and I do a ton. I have 3 different hops, but you want that flavor to come out. And but you kind of want, but you kind of want that too.
You probably do what, like 5 or 6 ounces or something like that?
For a 4-gallon batch, yeah.
Oh, Jesus. Okay, I was thinking for like a 5.5. Nope. Yeah. I think I'm gonna probably double the dry hop.
I honestly agree, and like you don't really have to worry about like clouding it. It's dark beer.
Yeah.
Like I mean, if you really want to, put a Werflock in there.
Yeah.
And it'll clear it out for you.
I did use a Werflock.
Oh yeah.
This one.
Okay, good.
Actually, my first time using Werflock, and wow,
it's so cool.
It really works.
And then it looks really, really weird when it's
but that just means all that stuff is in your
exactly yeah.
But yeah, and so the only thing about like flatly doubling the dry hop is I think I might not quite, I might try and prioritize a little bit more Nelson. But the other thing I thought of is that maybe I'll just flatly double the dry hop, but I'll add a Nelson addition in like the 5-minute, just to kind of shift that balance a little bit. Mm-hmm. And maybe I might also, I don't know. Like I kind of wish that there was a little bit less floral flavor and a little bit, I don't know. Yeah. I'm not really sure. Like, what do you think? Like, so just not in terms of it being a good beer, because it seems like you like it.
No, it's already gone. Yes,
it's gone. You're free to have some more.
Yes,
but yeah, I really like this beer. Mm-hmm. I think the drinkability, the kind of the pear and black ale part of it, we really nailed. It's like kind of a hoppier pear and black ale. I was not happy with sort of meeting the criteria of like the theme I set out for myself though. So what do you think? I've talked about kind of the changes to the hop schedule. Mm-hmm. 1, do you agree with those? And 2, like, do you have any other suggestions? What do you think could kind of help really nail that sort of theming?
I think your grain build is on point. I wouldn't change anything in the grain build. The hop schedule itself for the boil, I can agree maybe putting more of the Nelson in the end as well with everything else at the end to get the flavor. And then during the dry hop, let me ask, how long did you dry hop for?
5 days, I think. So
5 days?
I put the dry hops in at 72 hours. So I like the dry hop kind of at high Kreuzen, or just past. Yeah. Because ideally I want the yeast to kind of eat up any alcohol or any oxygen that I'm introducing when I open it up. Yeah. So yeah, I dry hopped then, and I undry hopped basically when I transferred. So I think it ended up being in for about a week.
Okay. As an idea, I would probably, because I usually do it like the next day. Like I'll throw in the hops the next day. Because usually they do say 24 to 72 hours. So you are right there still. But in my experience, I've always do it the next day. Yeah. Once I see that it's going, that's when I'll drop everything in. But I think upping your dry hop a lot, and maybe or maybe if you are doing it later, especially, hit it late, hit it hard, but then re-rack quick to get it out.
Oh yeah, just do like a short. Yeah. Let it get the initial flavor.
Get the flavor out of it quick, and then you just pull it out before. But don't leave it long enough to. Well, so that's an interesting kind of like a tea.
That's an interesting point you bring up, because I've heard that if you dry hop for too long, you start to extract those kind of more vegetal hop flavors, and I wonder, a week is not,
a week is not long. That's usually what I do.
Too long, but like I'm pretty sure that like you can get what you need out of a dry hop in like 1 to 3 days. Mm-hmm. And I do wonder if, like if I was getting any like vegetal flavors in the beer, maybe it's not enough to like tasted them on its own, but maybe it's kind of prioritizing that floweriness, and maybe that's why it's kind of pushing that flower scent towards an earthier, like
fruitiness,
kind of earthier sort of flower, not like fresh lilacs, like roses sort of a flower.
Yeah.
scent. And that may just be my hop choices too. There's really nothing out there on Magnet. It's not a widely used hop. So I was mostly going off of the like analysis of the oils that it contains and not people's experience brewing with it. So
I think it's your biggest spot that I wouldn't say improve, but maybe to tweak a little bit is that dry hopping. I think that's could be where because that's where you get your flavors of your hops. Like if you're doing a Galaxy, that's where you get your fruity flavor, not really in the boil as much. You're gonna get it there. So, or maybe even push the last your last round of hops later. Do it like at flame out and just pull them out.
Yeah.
And put it there because you just want the flavor of them. Yeah. Because the longer you leave it in, the more bitterness, the quicker it is in there. Because I've done that with just flame out. You just drop it in and then you cool it with it in there. Still, you'll still extract flavors that you may want, but I don't know. That'll be the only thing. Like I said, grain build. I think you're perfect. I think you're spot on.
And you liked the balance and the like the kind of mouthfeel, the drinkability.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it went down insanely easy. For especially again,
luckily it's not that strong.
Exactly. Again, people say dark beers are dangerous. They're not. They're really good and they're really drinkable.
Okay, so another thing I had thought about, but for the first try, I definitely didn't want to do it. I'm also just kind of I don't have a lot of experience with these sorts of additions, but I considered adding actual lilac and potentially actual gooseberry.
Michael Newton, are you coming over to the dark side? Oh, you are.
So what now I know you have worked with lavender a bit, and I know you have told me some kind of woes that it's sort of tricky working with flowers.
Well, lavender is very a little bit different because like I've done a lot of fruit and berries, obviously. Lavender, because of how it is and what it's even used for is as soap. Like if you let it sit too long, it becomes
it's like the
soap.
Association. Yes. It's like, well, this smells like a urinal tablet.
Yeah. You had to have in X amount to X amount of time. If you do too much, you're soap. If you sit too long, you're soap.
It's like it's the level of the flavor has to be right. Yeah. Okay.
And I think with both of those,
I wonder if that is similarly true for other flowers.
But see, like lilac is used as a smell for like some soaps and everything.
Right. Lavender's just so specific.
Yes.
It's like the one, the big one. Yeah.
Maybe put like a few sprigs of it maybe and after you as a secondary and maybe do like.
I know. So how long, what was the kind of sweet spot for you for lavender?
I still haven't found it. True. Like I did the mead obviously for the 6-pack and everything. I had lavender in it, but I did too long. Hence why there's blueberries in it now.
But now that worked out, though.
And it did.
That worked out because that sort of destroyed the soap association.
But then also with you're putting the gooseberries in there. I don't know what a gooseberry tastes like compared to blueberries.
I would like to find one. I've never seen
Someone tell us what it tastes like.
I've never seen one in like a store before. No. I've never had the opportunity to buy.
You had to go to like a fancy
The other thing I thought,
something.
I wonder if you could like just buy like gooseberry juice like on Amazon or something
Bezos
from like
has
it's
that.
probably like a health food supplement or something.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so and then for using the fruit, what do you think? Like when you use fruit, do you normally just you kind of rack onto it in secondary and let the yeast eat up the sugars off of it and just the flavors left? Or because I know like we make our grapefruit beer, we chill it. Then we add grapefruit juice. So presumably it stays chilled in the keg. Presumably like those sugars don't really ferment because we're already down at like 36 degrees. Presumably.
Yeah.
So crazier things have happened, but like
I will say,
but like most of the time I know like we made a mango kolsch for my mom.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And all we did was just rack some of our kolsch into secondary on some like mashed frozen mangoes, and then we let the yeast eat up all those sugars, and it still tasted fine because there's enough sugar in the beer.
I will say like for beer wise, fruit that I've done is really the tangerine peels. Like I don't really add in a lot of fruit to the beer. Now,
right. So you're not really adding sugar there. You're just adding the oils, the flavor.
Now with mead, which still has yeast and everything, it eats it up. Like I've done elderberry fig, I've done mango, I've done raspberry. Like there's a ton of fruit that you can do with it. I've done. I re-rack it and I put the fruit in and everything else and make sure the bubble is still on it. So if there is a little bit of sugar consumption by the yeast. What's left over, it gets out. But like honestly, like I don't think I've seen a bubble ever in my secondary, no matter whether mead or beer.
Yeah.
It's just there.
Well, yeah, because I guess for mead, you normally reach a high enough ABV that the yeast just kind of can't eat anymore.
Yeah.
So that would
and beer's probably the same way.
And probably not this one. I mean, if with it being so low ABV, these yeasts would be able to go way higher.
Okay.
So I assume they'd probably munch on it.
But you won't have that. It's just residual yeast, so it won't be a lot eating there. You'll get the flavor out, which I think will work. So if you do, and if I know, as recommendation, like I've done in the elderberry fig, I blend the elderberry and fig together, so like it opens up and everything. But like with mango, when I did the mango, I literally sliced up mango and dropped it in, and raspberries just dropped it in. With the blueberry lavender, I just took dried blueberries and put them in. So there's different ways you get the flavor of what you want. It's just whichever way you want to try.
Gotcha.
So I think with this one, honestly, again, I don't know what gooseberry tastes like or whatever, but like I would probably say put it in dried or put it in whole.
Yeah. Okay.
If you're going to do that way.
All right. Well, so I have some questions for you. So here's a quick fire one. If you were to make a Witcher beer, what would it be? What would your theme be?
Oh, if I had to make a Witcher beer,
first thing that comes to your head.
I would probably go stout or porter and have something like it would call a Monster's Heart or something like that. But like I would make it as black as like my porter's black. I would make it blacker. I would make it the blackest beer you could find and
call it Witcher's Mutagen.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. That's a good one. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. So that would be the one I would go with because I have finished season 2 at this point. No
spoilers.
I'm not gonna give it away, but like there are monsters obviously, and like they're just like as demented can be still. In season 1, you had like nice monsters. I forgot what it was called, but you had that one. You had that one that came out and had the big eyes, and it looked creepy, but it was like, I'm just here, hi guys, and then random dude just stabs him and like, yeah, I killed it. Like it wasn't doing anything, but like in season 2, they're just more angry and mean. So yeah.
All right. Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
So next question: if you were to brew a black one, are you interested in brewing a black IPA? Having previously had very little experience with the style, now that you've got to sample a couple, would you brew one? And if so, what's kind of your thought process? What's your idea? What do you think you try and make?
I think we touched on it, but I'm just gonna go more into detail with it. I will probably do more of a tropical feel to it. I would get maybe a little
go for the edible arrangement.
Go for the edible arrangement feel, like because strawberry, pineapple, stuff like that is good with chocolate, with getting those hops. And like there are very tropical, very fruity hops out there that you can do. Dry hop with them, especially, and you'll get those flavors out of it. I think.
And so you're
maybe a little more chocolate. To be clear, is probably one thing I would do for the grain.
Yeah, and that makes sense. Yeah, because I intentionally, it seems like for that one, you would almost be leaning into the malt a little more than even I did. Whereas I used like the lightest black malt I could. You might intentionally inject a little bit of chocolate flavor as a compliment.
Yeah, but maybe just like I don't know if you said it here or maybe you said it off when we weren't recording, but we talked about the chocolate wheat grain that you used in another beer. Like that would be a way to get flavor without making it completely like dark and everything else. Like a nice balance of flavor. And again, like I might lean more. He might lean more towards the Alpha Clause here with that flavor and everything. But like, I think it'll be really good.
But hey, I mean, I think that I definitely think that could work. I'd be interested to see it.
Yeah.
And now you're talking, just to be clear here, you're not talking about a fruited beer. This would be a 4-ingredient beer.
4-ingredient beer. I will stick with the rules.
To get those.
I will stick with
Ryan,
the rules.
Well, look at us. Just
I know, we're switching
places. All right. Well, I think that's a wrap then, unless you had any other comments.
No, I think this is a great beer. I hope you make this again.
We're making it again.
Yes.
I need to... I more than anything, I want to make it again because I love the base, but I really want to dial it in.
Yeah.
This is one that I want to iterate on.
Yeah, exactly.
If you have any comments, if you have any suggestions about sort of how to achieve the goals I was discussing, we'd love to hear that on our.
What does a gooseberry taste like?
What does a gooseberry taste like? Or if you have a great idea for Netflix's next big small themed beer.
Yes.
You can reach us on Twitter at Brewthers-In-Law. That's BREWTHERS in-law.
Yes.
Just like the podcast. And also you can check out our website for more info on the podcast, brewthers-in-law.com. In addition to that, Ryan, where can people find you?
You can find me at Twitter. I'm at Rambo Kuhn. That's RAMBOKUHN. Or if anything more brewing related, that's Wise Old Owls Brew. You can also find that on Twitter, or not Twitter, that is Twitter, on TikTok as well. I'm on there doing videos. You can check out our advent calendar that we did for December. It was more liquor, which is not brewing, but it was fun. And then, of course, you can find the podcast and give us comments or rating. You can go on YouTube. You can go on Google Play. You can go on Apple Podcasts. You can go on Spotify. We're pretty much everywhere at this point. We will find you. Don't you worry. But
you will find us.
Until then.
Don't be creepy.
Cheers.